Beneath Venezuela lies the world's largest proven oil reserves, over 300 billion barrels, surpassing even Saudi Arabia. This staggering wealth of natural resources has long made Venezuela a focal point in the global energy landscape, drawing the attention of superpowers and multinational corporations alike. This immense resource should have made Venezuela a global energy titan, fueling prosperity and influence. Yet its potential has been squandered, leaving behind a legacy of missed opportunities and decaying infrastructure. For decades, Venezuela supplied the world, especially the US, with heavy sour crude oil that only specialized refineries can process. This unique relationship made Venezuela a critical link in the global oil supply chain, with its crude powering industries and economies far beyond its borders. When this supply is disrupted, global markets scramble, prices spike, and refineries face costly adjustments. The ripple effects are felt worldwide, from Wall Street to gas stations on Main Street. Yet, political chaos, mismanagement, and international sanctions have crippled Venezuela's oil industry. Years of corruption and instability have eroded the foundations of what was once a thriving sector. Production plummeted from 3.5 million barrels a day to barely 1 million by 2025. The country's output, once the envy of the region, has become a shadow of its former self. The state oil company, PDVSA, is starved of investment, its infrastructure decaying, and its skilled workforce gone. Once a symbol of national pride, PDVSA now struggles to keep the lights on. As Venezuela's oil output collapsed, a power vacuum emerged in the global market. Other producers rushed to fill the gap, but none could match Venezuela's unique blend of resources and geography. Isolated from traditional partners, Venezuela's reserves sat untapped, lacking capital and customers. The nation's vast wealth became a stranded asset, waiting for a new player to unlock its potential. Into this void stepped China, not just to buy oil, but to secure a strategic foothold in America's backyard. China saw opportunity where others saw risk, investing billions to gain access and influence. While the world watched Venezuela's decline, China quietly moved in, reshaping the future of Venezuelan oil. Their involvement is transforming not just the industry, but the geopolitical balance in the region. This is the story of how China's ambitions collided with American power, changing the global energy game and redefining what the future holds for Venezuela and the world. As Venezuela's economy collapsed and Western lenders withdrew, the country found itself increasingly isolated and desperate for cash. International banks closed their doors, and foreign investment dried up almost overnight, leaving Venezuela's government scrambling for alternatives. China stepped in, not as a savior, but as a shrewd investor, ready to seize an opportunity where others saw only risk. Over a decade ago, Beijing began offering massive oil-for-loan deals, billions in cash up front, repaid with years of crude shipments. These agreements were carefully structured to benefit China, ensuring repayment even as Venezuela's economy spiraled further downward. This arrangement gave Venezuela desperately needed funds to keep its government afloat and pay for basic imports, even as hyperinflation ravaged the country. At the same time, it guaranteed China a steady, discounted oil supply, fueling its own rapid economic growth. China's loans to Venezuela eventually topped $50 billion, making it one of the largest bilateral lending relationships in the world. By 2026, nearly $19 billion would still be outstanding, a debt burden that weighed heavily on Venezuela's future. Much of Venezuela's oil was now mortgaged to China, binding the country's economic fate and future development to Beijing's interests and priorities. While the US used sanctions to isolate Venezuela and pressure its government, China used its financial leverage to draw the country closer into its orbit. China's financial muscle became a lifeline for Venezuela, deepening ties between the two nations. This wasn't about ideology. It was about securing resources, influence, and a strategic foothold in America's backyard. China became Venezuela's banker, its most important customer, and a powerful player in the Western Hemisphere. With access to the world's largest oil reserves locked in, Beijing's oil-for-loan model proved to be a quiet but effective strategic coup. For China, the deal was about more than oil. It was about expanding its global influence and rewriting the rules of international finance. But this deep dependency set the stage for a dramatic confrontation, as Venezuela's future became inextricably linked to the ambitions of a rising superpower. With oil for loan deals in place, China quickly became Venezuela's main oil buyer, stepping in just as the country's economy teetered on the brink of collapse. These deals were more than just business, they were a lifeline for Venezuela and a strategic move for China. As US and European sanctions cut off other markets, Venezuela found itself increasingly isolated, with few options left for selling its most valuable resource. Beijing leveraged this position to buy Venezuelan crude at steep discounts, fueling its energy-hungry economy and ensuring a steady supply of oil for its growing industries. By late 2025, China was importing nearly 750,000 barrels a day, an astonishing 80% of Venezuela's total oil exports. Tankers sailed across oceans, carrying the lifeblood of Venezuela's economy straight to Chinese shores. Much of this oil was funneled to China's independent teapot refiners, whose operations depended on cheap, heavy crude. These smaller refineries thrived on the discounted oil, keeping their production lines running and their workers employed. To evade sanctions, oil shipments were disguised through ship-to-ship transfers, often under the cover of darkness, keeping the flow alive in the shadows and making it nearly impossible for authorities to track the true origin of the crude. China's loans kept Venezuela afloat, and Venezuela's oil powered Chinese industry, a closed-loop system of dependency that benefited both nations but left Venezuela deeply indebted and reliant on Beijing's continued support. This was economic statecraft at its finest. China controlled Venezuela's oil exports without a single soldier on the ground, using finance and trade as its tools of influence. But this entire arrangement relied on one thing: political stability in Caracas. Any disruption could unravel the delicate balance that kept oil and money flowing. If the regime fell, China's grip and its billions would be at risk, threatening not just business interests, but the future of Venezuela's economy itself. The world's attention was elsewhere, distracted by other crises, but the stakes in Venezuela couldn't have been higher. Then, everything changed overnight. On January 3, 2026, the balance of power in Venezuela was shattered. U.S. Special Forces launched a swift operation in Caracas, capturing President Nicolas Maduro and toppling his regime in hours. President Trump announced the U.S. would oversee a transitional government and take direct control of Venezuela's oil reserves. Major American oil companies were invited to rebuild the industry, aiming to restore Venezuela as a top global supplier. The U.S. declared it would sell Venezuelan oil on the open market, including to rivals like China and Russia, but strictly on Washington's terms. This bold intervention upended years of economic maneuvering by China. The contest for Venezuela had moved from quiet financial deals to open military action. China's silent victory was suddenly in jeopardy. The global energy chessboard had been flipped overnight. The U.S. intervention sent shockwaves through Beijing. China's $19 billion in loans to Venezuela, once secured by oil, were now at risk of default. The new US-backed government had no obligation to honor debts to the ousted regime. Overnight, oil shipments to China stopped, leaving teapot refiners scrambling and China's energy strategy in chaos. The American move exposed the limits of China's economic power when confronted by military force. Beijing faced a dilemma: retaliate and risk US sanctions, or accept massive financial losses. The dragon's quiet feast had turned into a costly lesson in global power politics. China's grand strategy in Latin America was suddenly on the brink. The loss of Venezuelan crude didn't spark a global oil panic, but it triggered a crisis for China's teapot refiners. Their plants, built for heavy sour oil, now scrambled to find alternatives, mainly from Canada and Mexico. This put Chinese buyers in direct competition with U.S. Gulf Coast refiners, driving up prices for these specific grades. The era of cheap Venezuelan oil was over. Profit margins for refiners on both sides of the Pacific shrank. The completion of Canada's Trans Mountain Pipeline made it easier for Canadian oil to reach Asia, intensifying the scramble. The global oil map was being redrawn, not by a shortage, but by a targeted disruption. New winners and losers emerged as trade flows shifted overnight. The fallout from Venezuela's crisis was just beginning to reshape the industry. Facing billions in losses and a strategic defeat, China was forced to pivot from power broker to supplicant. Publicly, Beijing condemned U.S. intervention, Privately, it scrambled to salvage what it could from its Venezuelan investment. Direct confrontation risked catastrophic U.S. sanctions. So China prepared for tough negotiations with Venezuela's new government. Analysts predicted China would recover only a fraction of its loans, perhaps 40 to 50 cents on the dollar. The oil for loan model, once a symbol of Chinese influence, was now a cautionary tale about political risk. China's Belt and Road Initiative would face new scrutiny, with future deals demanding more safeguards and transparency. Meanwhile, China accelerated efforts to diversify its oil supply, seeking stability over dominance. The silent victory in Venezuela had become a loud, costly lesson in global strategy. Venezuela's upheaval has redrawn the global energy map. The country faces a long road to recovery, needing billions in investment and years to restore its oil output. For China, the crisis is a wake-up call. Economic power alone can't guarantee security in a world where military force still matters. China will pay for its losses and rethink its approach, focusing on diversification and caution. The U.S. has reasserted itself as a dominant force in global energy, willing to intervene directly to secure resources. The competition for heavy crude will intensify, squeezing refiners and reshaping trade flows. The rules of the oil game have changed. It's not just about reserves, but about who controls the flow. Venezuela's fate is now tied to the ambitions of two superpowers. The silent war is over, but the struggle for energy dominance is just beginning.